This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's episode 474 of the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner, and joining me for this episode on the heels of their gold medal win in the Helles category at World Beer Cup is Brian Hink of Wanderback. Welcome to the podcast, Brian.
Thank you for having me. Just thrilled to be here.
We are turning this one around quickly. You won your medal last night. I reached out this morning, and I should say reached out because over the last couple of years, you all have been sending beer to the magazine for review. And over the course of that, we have seen some awesome beers come our way, especially awesome lager beers. Things like your Future Proof Pills that scored a 97 last year in our lager issue. Your Hugo Hoppy Pale Lager, which scored a 95 last year. 2 years ago, the beer you just won gold for, Wanderback Lager, scored a 93 with us. That was your first year being open. You were already crushing with great scores there. And so here you are. Gold medal last night in the World Beer Cup and in the Helles category. And I figured, hey, let's have a conversation about that. Thank you for jumping on this so quickly. I think we're all just kind of recovering today from the Craft Brewers Conference. But it was a fun time, huh?
It's great. Love CBC. Been a number of years. I haven't gone in a number of years, but I went many years prior to COVID, and it's so great to be back. Love it in Philly. It's our backyard pretty much, and we're based, South Jersey. So Philly is right over the bridge for us. Love Philly. Grew up going there, and CBC is just such an awesome time. Such a great way to connect with the industry, all your longtime industry friends, former colleagues, former, people that were your, I had brewers that I saw who I haven't seen in years. That was just great to see and hear about their success stories, and just such a wonderful time. The seminars are phenomenal. Talking with all the suppliers and hearing how, harvest went, it's phenomenal. I love it.
I thought it was a good vibe this year. I know a lot of people were nervous going in. I'll get, the challenges that the business side of the craft beer world's having these days. But, there was good representation. A lot of folks were there. It was good to see folks out. And, the vibe was pretty good. And Philly, obviously, just a killer beer town for all of that, and was a great host. We recorded a live version of the podcast there on Monday night at CBC, and that one's going to air next Tuesday out here on the podcast feed. So those folks who weren't there to see it live in person can experience that conversation. And it is a sulfury one. It is a very, very sulfury one with one particular sulfury boy. But you all will hear all of that on Tuesday. We're going to talk, Brian and I are going to talk about their lager program, their approach to brewing. It's you are a nomadic brewery right now and laying down some roots soon. We can get into all of that, but before we do...
Hey, Andy from G&D Chillers. For decades, we partnered with breweries to solve their everyday challenges, from efficiency upgrades to sustainable refrigerant solutions. If you're ready to future-proof your cold side, we're here to help.
G&D now offers their Elite 290 Micro Series with 5H chillers, bringing even more flexibility to their propane-powered lineup. In fact, they're building one right now for Red Clover Ale Company in partnership with Efficiency Vermont. It runs on a natural refrigerant with near-zero global warming potential, projected to deliver around 10% more efficiency than A2L refrigerant systems. That's smart sustainability backed by proven engineering and trusted performance. With 24/7 support and remote monitoring, your cold side stays dialed in day or night. Explore the Elite 290 Micro Series and more at gdchillers.com/podcast. And Berkeley Yeast just launched Dry Tropics London, their best-selling liquid yeast strain, now with all the ease-of-use benefits of dry yeast. Dry Tropics London delivers the soft, pillowy mouthfeel and juicy character you'd expect from a top-tier London ale strain, but with a serious upgrade, a burst of thiols that unleash vibrant, layered notes of grapefruit and passion fruit. A lot of brewers love the clean passion fruit you get from Tropics, but they don't want every IPA to be a tropical fruit bomb. At the dry yeast price point, you can pitch and ditch without breaking the bank, or you can co-pitch with your house strain. to adjust the intensity of the notes. And with nationwide free shipping, there's never been a better time to try Dry Tropics. Order now at berkeleyyeast.com and experience the ease and impact of Dry Tropics London yeast. Also, this episode is sponsored by PakTech, delivering craft beer multi-packing you can trust. PakTech's handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable, helping breweries close the loop and advance the circular economy. With a minimalist design, durable functionality you can rely on, and custom color matching, PakTech helps brands stand out while staying sustainable. Trusted by craft brewers nationwide, they offer a smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer. To learn more, visit paktech-opi.com. That's PakTech, paktech-opi.com. All right, Brian, where's your story start? Where's your craft beer story start?
I've been brewing professionally since 2013. 13 so years in the industry already now. I love every bit of it. I started Cape May Brewing Company down in really, really, really southern New Jersey. At the time, that was just a tiny little, hole-in-the-wall brewery. It has since grown to the largest craft brewery in the state of New Jersey. At the time, I was hired by
one of our craft beer and brewing beers of the year last year.
Cape May Light. Cape May Light, yeah. Congrats to the whole production crew down there. A lot of good friends down there still. And at the time at Cape May back in 2013, Chris Hink was one of the founders and owners of Cape May. He's since left that company. Was a retired stay-at-home dad. He hired me to replace him on the brew house, do all the brewing and everything, as he was focused on growing the whole production space and building out expansions and everything. He left there. Our other partner, Justin, he was there as well, similar time frame. And so we were all down at Cape May for 8-9 years each. We all kind of left various reasons. For me, I was started washing kegs, filling kegs, flipping tanks, just grunt work. I was behind the bar, but then trying to get my way over to the taproom side, or out of the taproom side over to the production side. And just kind of was a sponge, soaked up everything I could, just took on as much responsibility as I could. Had one guy helping out some cellar work. And then when I left there, I left in summer 22. There's 30 some people on the production team alone. I 3 lab people, 4 or 5 warehouse people, 3 brewers, 3 cellarmen, whole packaging crew. As the company grew, my role kept growing, my responsibilities kept growing, my level of knowledge kept growing. Kept going to the CBCs, learning as much as I could, just kept being a sponge. And so that was where I really kind of grew in this industry. I left there in 22, went up to a small brewery, another coastal New Jersey brewery, for 2 years, Ship Bottom Brewery. I was there for about 2 years, director of production while working on this project, Wanderback. And when I left Cape May, Cape May was getting to the point where it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the bigger it got, it was a little less about the beer. And as a brewer, the beer is what always mattered the most to me. It's beer first, beer above all. And I kind of knew that I needed to chart my own course and start a brewery that could allow me to brew the beers I want to brew, that I'm passionate about. I love all beers. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm just drinking lagers. I love me a hazy IPA. I love a ESB, a pub ale. I'll dabble with sours here and there. I used to love barrel aged sours and all that mixed firm stuff. And I just love beer. I've always loved beer, loved all aspects of beer. And I just wanted to be able to make beer that I wanted to brew and have the complete control from start to finish, to the look of the cans, to how it's handled out in the trade. And there's no way to do that, working for other people and everything else. So it was kind of, I just kind of knew that I needed to go solo with it. And but there's a whole lot that I did not know. I was always just strictly production. So I started talking with my buddy Justin, who was there, Justin Vitti. He was there at Cape May for probably about 8 years, overlapping with me. He was always sales and distribution, understood growing the sales team, points of distribution, executed in retail, all this stuff that was just completely foreign to me. So we started talking. Chris Hink, co-founder of Cape May, he had left end of 2019. He was a stay-at-home dad. I jokingly say he was retired. And we were still buddies. We'd go play disc golf and, always chat about the future, what's next, what's happening. And over our shared love of like lager and local ingredients. It's an awesome maltster, South Jersey, pretty 15 miles from where our eventual brewery is going to be in Vineland, New Jersey. We're just nomads right now, old school gypsy brewing. But so talking with Chris, we're talking about like Rabbit Hill. That's the malt house that we get all of our grain from, and talking about them and just like the passion. And it was kind of like, if we started a brewery that was more just passion focused on the quality of the beer, putting beer first, just beer above all, that kind of got him interested in getting back into the industry. So after a couple of months of chatting and talking, we kind of all agreed to kind of go at it together and make this thing a thing. And that's kind of where the name Wanderback came from. We all wandered back to each other. We wanted to be classic beers, but not entirely classic. Our our logo and all of our can artwork, they can kind of lean futuristic, they can lean retro, they can lean like retro future. And so kind of timeless, classic. We don't want to be like just an overtly retro throwback thing, because, anything retro now gets old pretty quickly. And so we started talking, conceptualizing this project and just getting real nerdy about it. Chris, he's an engineer by trade. He was designing satellites for Lockheed Martin before he opened up Cape May Brewery. So he's just a huge nerd. I'm a big nerd. Or Justin, he's a big nerd as well. He's a big star. He's a Trekkie. We're all just nerds. We're all beer nerds. And we're like, let's just make it something that we want to drink, a brand that we're happy with, a brand that we're like super proud of, and not just like a marketing company, not just, going with whatever the recent trend is. It's not, oh, this is the new style, let's jump on that now. Just, as insanely cliched as it is, brew the beers that we want to drink. And, and that's kind of where Wanderback started and everything.
It's kind of the challenge of growth, right? The larger you get, then the markets that you start to play in require you to then compete on cost. You've got to be much more cognizant of your COGS and keep that at a point where you can keep your price for people, and that just has some creative restrictions on you as a brewer. And by scaling down and doing this thing you can find customers that want that and are willing to pay that premium price for that premium experience and go along with you on that ride. It's just harder to do that at that largest kind of scale. Although I will say that the bronze medal in your category of Helles, Kirkland's signature lager, does a pretty good job of maintaining that. And at some point here, I have actually talked to Ben, their brewmaster, and we're going to get a Kirkland's signature lager episode of the podcast in there somewhere.
Nice.
Anyway, so I want to let's explore that, because it's interesting to think about ingredients from a local craft maltster close by as being kind of fundamental to your idea of even launching a brewery, and crucial to that. And that same thing, that is a message that you put out there, through in all of your messaging. Even your Instagram post about the win yesterday mentioned the maltster and the malt that they make as being crucial to that win. So I want to talk about that, and and the way that how that then influenced the beers that you wanted to make and call Wanderback beers. Before we do that, the multi-layered wonders of indie hops Strata are now easier than ever for brewers to tap into. Introducing Strata Cryo in collaboration with Yakima Chief Hops. Whether brewing up a single hop Strata IPA to wow customers with the depth of flavor this variety delivers, or modernizing your flagship IPA to continue setting the highest standards, Strata T90, Strata CGX, Strata Hyperboost, and now Strata Cryo provide the tools for brewers to create their unique masterpiece. Indie Hop Strata, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And this podcast is sponsored by the Midea 5050 Flex, the industry's first dual-compartment 3-way convertible freezer. The 5050 Flex is designed to flex with your life. It can convert to all fridge, all freezer, or half and half with just the touch of a button. Plus, with reversible doors and adjustable storage compartments, you can stay organized no matter your food storage needs. The 5050 Flex is also designed to maintain a stable temperature, even in non-climate controlled spaces, so it's perfect for your garage, man cave, or wherever you need a little more space. Maybe use all 20 cubic feet as a beer fridge. Check out midea.com/US for more information on how to take your beer storage to the next level. Also, your brewery deserves a supplier that can keep your customers engaged with new flavors. That's why Old Orchard releases juice concentrates and blends with trending flavor profiles like white sangria and passion orange guava. If you need a custom solution, Old Orchard's R&D team wants to hear from you. Fruit ingredients that get you. Get Old Orchard's free samples at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. All right, Brian. So you guys start this brewery with ingredients, front and center, and this idea of making beer with malt from a local maltster close by you. That reflects itself both in lagers that are going to showcase that. You also make hoppy beers, and you make other styles. You make all kinds of beer that speaks to you. But talk about developing that beer program, where your major focus lies, and then how that intersects with this focus on ingredients.
So the ingredient was like talking through the concepts of it and beer first and beers that we want to drink and lagers. And we kept going back to that local malt, that local barley we have available to us. And we had the pleasure of using their very first commercial batch of barley back in 2016, when we were at KMA, of course. And it was very rustic. The brewery smelled like a barnyard. It was very distinctive. And as Rabbit Hill grew, as they advanced their processes and everything there, it got really clean, consistent. It's 100% floor malted too. They do 2,000 pound batches roughly, and they still floor malted. They're in there turning it over with the rake and the shovel, every, whatever it is, 8 hours, I think they have to turn it. And it's just like this old world rusticness to it. Just such there's a definite romanticism to it. The farm is pristine. It's 600 acres of the most beautiful farmland rolling. It's like the Windows 95 background, just like the rolling green hills. In about end of April, probably give another 2 weeks, it's just going to be rolling green hills that'll just start that beautiful shift in color before it gets that lovely just golden straw color right before harvest in early June. And using that kind of as a foundationary piece, we were thinking about why is a Czech Pilsner brewed with Czech malt? Why is a German lager brewed with German malt? Why is Weimarman the best? Why is Heidelberg the best? What is it? And it's they're not using that grain because I'm trying to make a German Pilsner. They're using that grain because that's what they have available to them. It's right there. And so once we kind of started thinking about it and viewing it through that lens, it was we can just make our beers with this. It can be part of our house flavor. If every brewery's, and I love Weimarman. I have a pair of red overalls from GABF medal with back at Cape May in 2019. At Chip Bottom, I got a gold medal for their blonde ale, which was with proximity malt, which is another U.S. malt but not small craft. And so you can use anything and make great beer with it. But let's just have that the terroir aspect of it, the locality aspect. I get to get on the phone. I talk to my farmer weekly. I talk with Hillary pretty much weekly from Rabbit Hill. Just how's it going? How are things looking? How's with all the fertilizer skyrocketing prices right now? How's that affecting you guys? How's the fuel pricing hurting you guys? We just talk all the time, and I know that was just such a nice aspect to it. I don't think we thought, we're going to use this grain because it's going to make us a gold medal winning lager. It was just, no, it's local. It's, it's going to be part of our flavor and we'll adapt with it. And the numbers were off the charts, the protein content, the extract, the fan, it was, it's just, the numbers are European grade level. They were just phenomenal quality. And with the locality, it was too much positive energy to not just make the commitment to go with it. And we priced our structure around it. With that history in the industry, we knew where we needed to be COG wise, pricing wise. We came in very aggressive on our pricing because as a nomad gypsy brewer, we don't have a retail space, so we're strictly out for distribution. For me, with my background, when I started at KMA, we were 1,200 barrels. When I left, we were 46,000 barrels. That's that's quite the growth in barrelage over 9.5 years. And so I didn't want to, not that I want to be I don't want to come anywhere close to a 46,000 barrel brewery, but like I love the process control, the execution, we have a lenticular filter that I use for both our lager here and Future Proof. If it was just nothing but like little, 3-barrel batches, it'd be really tough to dial in that process and really have that complete control over the process. The first piece of equipment we bought, we got a screaming deal on an auction for a C-Box. That was literally the first piece of equipment we bought as a company. And I knew, I was like, if we're distribution only at the start, distribution focused, we need shelf life. We need our cans as good of quality as possible. And the only way to know is if you're not measuring it, you have no idea how good or bad your DO levels are. So I run a 2-head goose line. It's awesome. And I average 30 DO coming off out of the atmospheric filler. Coming out of the bright, we're, sub 15, usually get, between 10 and 15 DO, which is great. Awesome. But then taking it one step further, because our first batches were not nearly that good because we were not using the cannon line that we have. We were using a different cannon line. I was struggling to get below 800, which was horrific. And I was mortified by that. But the beer tasted great a month later. And it just went back to that, like the freshness, using that grain. We're using grain that's coming out of the kiln 24 hours beforehand. Like there's this freshness that carries through in our beers that is unexplainable, other than it's just fresh. It's not sitting on a barge coming across the ocean for 3 months. It's not sitting in storage somewhere for 3 months. That freshness just carries through, and it just has such a brightness to the beer. And so yeah, with that local grain source, that was just quality numbers were through the roof. The flavor was awesome and just getting better every day. And then just being able to have the control at that scale as a, focused on distribution brewery. Our first year, 6-7 months, we did like 250 barrels. But our first full year, last year, 2025, we did like, just about 500 barrels sold, which is nothing to, be scoffing at in this, where the beer scene is currently. And it was a challenge. And, we're getting out there, we're, pounding the pavement and bootstrapping it. And, it all just went back to that, just making the beer that we want to drink and keeping the quality and the process there, and really just having a handle on all the processes to it.
Sure. Well, let's talk then about, so we've got this, you're using Pilsner malt now from Rabbit Hill as the core of Helles and these others pills. Am I right?
Yep. Yeah, most of their Pilsner malt.
So, knowing that that's now your kind of, fixed point that you are thinking about recipe around, talk to me about how the rest of that development, in Helles and then also in Pils, came from there. How do you then think about, number one, you're working with a partner brew house, and so you have to work within the constraints of, you find a good partner that also can produce, and do it at the kind of level that you need to do it, although you're hands-on with this and it's not just sending a recipe to someone and having them do it for you. Working with that partner and then finding a process that works to pull the best from that malt, and then of course carrying that through fermentation and beyond. So, talk about that kind of, building a technical process to get the best out of this malt.
That partnership with our quote unquote contract partner, it's Hidden Sands Brewery. They're in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey. Small little brewery. They don't really do much in the way of distribution. They have good, strong taproom following. But their brew house was actually on the floor at CBC in 2016. It was a gorgeous 4-vessel semi-automated 20-barrel DME system. Beautiful brew house. One of the best brew houses I've ever brewed on. And when they were first building that brew house out in 2016, they were thinking it was going to go at that time, as everybody was looking at the numbers and the growth where the industry was going. They were building that out for distribution, and never quite went that way for them. So that's why we approached them, knowing that brew house could really handle more than they were putting its through paces for. And I just really wanted to brew in that brew house too. So we approached them, and it kind of worked out well. They were between brewers at the moment, so I was helping them out kind of, I needed to learn the system to brew my beer, so I was kind of helping them out and helping kind of like retrain one of their employees on the brew house after the fact. And so it's just this, we say it is contract brew, and legally in the eyes of New Jersey, it is contract, but it's very much gypsy brew, and it's old school. I go in there, I mash it, I mill in, I mash it, I run the whole process, I cellar it, do all the lab checks and package it and everything. That brew house has been awesome. I do a decoction on every batch of beer I make, which is just the spoils of having a 4-vessel system. I do a mash out decoction on every beer. And that was
what does that decoction do? Again, you're thinking about decoction in relationship to this specific malt now that you're also using, and what character does that pull from your local craft malt there?
So with this malt being very European, close on the numbers, the extract's phenomenal. The like I said, the protein content's great, fans awesome. It definitely, and I use 3470 as my yeast for everything. So the beers like to attenuate. Lager, initially the first couple batches were finishing 2.8 to a 3 range. Adjusted some of the mash parameters to bring that a little bit drier. The future proof Pilsner, that one finishes like a 1.8. So the pills I want bone dry. With that brew house, it's on a well system, and so but it goes through a filter, so it's almost like just a very neutral, very blank well water canvas. So I can really build a nice layered water profile for this beer, which is going to finish dry. It's a Helles, right? So we want it to just be effortlessly drinkable. Something that really, if you want to just thoughtlessly throw it back, yeah, sure, great. Don't even think about it. It just goes down in 2 sips. Or if you want to just pick it apart, really dive into the nitty gritty, there's so much nuance to it there. And so it's dry, but it doesn't come across as thin. There's too many Helleses in this country, especially where it's either sweet or it's thin, and there's very little wiggle room in that. And with that decoction, with being able to do the step mash into a decoction for the mash out, it has this richness, this fullness to it that otherwise just would not be there. I haven't done a side-by-side. Really, one of these days I'll get around to it to really prove that point to myself, or maybe I won't, because I don't want to break my own heart about it. But I really feel that decoction has that like textural mouthfeel quality to it that otherwise wouldn't be there. It would just be thin. Yes, building the water profile helps, being able to lean a little heavier on the chloride, being able to soften the edges in that regard. But even the Pilsner that finishes at a 1.8, like, it doesn't come across as thin. Granted, with the Pilsner, you do get a lot of the tannins from the hops really act as that counterpoint and really help to layer the profile in that regard. We don't just do lagers, we do a lot of IPAs too, one of our other flagships, and our IPA finishes at a 2.8, which in today's world is like, people look at you like you're insane for doing that. But you would never know it. You drink it, it has this softness to it. It has this, like, it's not sweet, it's this fullness that has no business being there, and I think it's a decoction. I really do.
So you keep mentioning mash out decoction, and versus decoction that might move along with your step mash. Explain what that is, just to make it clear for folks.
So we do depends on the style of beer, depends which beer we're doing, but sometimes I'm doing a beta glucan mash in 118 range. For the lager itself, I do just jump right into like 144, 145 range, and then jump to like 158 for a bit, and then we'll send 2/3 over to the louder ton. So we have a 4-vessel, so mash mixer we mash into. Then we're able to send 2/3 to the louder ton, leave a third behind, and then we bring that to a boil. And it's just, in the process of this system, it's, even if it weren't easy, I would still do it. But on this system, it just makes it so easy to send 2/3 over, pause the transfer, bring it to a boil. I change that length of the boil depending on the beer. The Pilsner, I learned it from the Schoenraumer episode you guys had a couple years back. That I listened to that one dozens of times prior to launching this brand. And I think he said it just gets a kiss of a boil on the decoction. And I heard that. I was like, that's brilliant. I love that. Versus my Helles here, it's like a 4-minute decoction boil. I like to just get a little bit of that Maillard reaction going on. And then we do like a fest beer, not a Marzen, but a fest beer, more the golden modern style. I go like, I think I'll be brewing that next month or June, actually. I want to say, I think I do like a 10-minute boil on that. We do a Czech dark lager in the winter. I do a 20-minute boil for that decoction. So depending on the beer, I'll boil that portion of the decoction appropriately for it. Once that time's up, transfer to the lauter tun, run the rakes for a couple minutes get it somewhat, I don't want it fully homogeneous. That's obviously what the Vorloff's for, but just enough to kind of mix it up, try to break up any like big hot spots in there, and raise the rest of that up from that. If we're in like the 158 range, raise that up to like 170, 172 for a mash out.
So then you move from this hot side process, or I should say, in terms of Helles and or Pilsner. Maybe we'll start with Helles. What do hops look like? Your malt has a flavor to it, and it's one that you love. There are expectations for noble hops, even within Helles, or at least some bitterness that feels in this kind of right zone. But some of those, hop flavors need to work with some of the malt flavor itself. You can go too grassy, you can go too herbal. How do you then balance hops in with this flavor of your malt?
So all noble hops, of course. We use Mittelfrüh and Saaz. Depends on how what our pre-boil looks like, but minimum 75-minute boil usually. Sometimes between 75 and 90. Just try to get that like greater than 5% boil off. Usually target like 6 to 8% boil off. First hop addition's like 45 minutes in, with 45 minutes remaining of the boil. So no hops at the up front there. Don't want that harsh, sharp bitterness from the hops. Versus the Pilsner, the German Pilsner, that does get a first wort hop, because I do want that upfront bitey bitterness to it. I love the first wort hop for my Pilsners. I'm a big analogy guy. I love analogies, and I always was trying to think of an analogy for first wort, and it was like, if you get into the car and you have the speakers at a lower volume and then you gradually crank it up to 10, it's not so bad. Versus if you get into a car and you left it at 10 the previous night, you're like, oh, that's jarring. It can have that like really just sharp jarringness. So I love the first wort for my Pilsners. But so I don't do that for the Helles first editions. That with 45 minutes left gets a I think it's Mittelfrüh there, and then it's Saaz at like 30 and Mittelfrüh around 20, I want to say. It is very, very Bierstadt Helles inspired. My brother lives in Denver. I used to go out regularly. He still sends me back beer regularly. I almost always request at least one Bierstadt Helles to come back. So that beer was very, very influential on this beer. I think that's one of the best beers in this country. And I can't get it here. So why not make a beer that is heavily inspired by that one?
You'll never have to compete against them in that category since they won't enter. So, you're safe there.
It's, I've done blind side-by-sides. And it was early on, Bierstadt was infinitely better. And I was like, all right, where do I have to move the goalpost to? And so I would target, the clarity was the big one, that the just general, yes, it looks brighter, but that brightness comes through in the finish. The dryness to it, that was definitely one that I wanted to attack early on. I wanted to dry it out a little bit. The hops I was very happy with the hops out of the gate. And I didn't make any wholesale changes to it. It was just kind of nibbling at the margins, just constantly trying to just get it that little bit better every batch, a little bit, maybe just a tighter on the mill gap just to eke out a little bit more efficiency. So I was leaving less sugars behind, just being able to extract a little bit more off that malt there. Playing with my pH throughout the whole hot side was a big thing that I learned throughout this beer. Being such a small beer, starting is at a 10.8, I want to say. I think it starts at somewhere in that range, 10.8 or 11.2, I forget exactly. So it's not a huge beer by any means. 4.9% finishes in that like 2.6-ish range right now, I think it is. So the final run-ins, you got to be really careful on your pH. You don't want to over-extract. We always talk about not collecting below 2.5, but pH, most people don't talk about that as much. And so I started to acidify my sparge water to make sure that those final run-ins were staying in a good, healthy range. I think I'm at a 2.65 on my final run-ins for the pH, which I'm thrilled with that. I said 5.65. So I'm not over extracted. I'm not pulling those like astringent tannins out of the grain, the huskiness to it. Just because it's a Helles, it's pure. It's supposed to just, be effortlessly drinkable. And if there's something's weird in there, what is it's too stringy, grainy, astringent. And so much of that is on the hot side with your lauter and with your temps on your sparge, obviously. You just got to have such, take such care to make sure you're hitting all your numbers and all your marks. And we take that same approach on all the beers, obviously. It's not just for the Helles, but all the beers, I monitor my run-ins very closely, and I'm adjusting pH as needed, making sure that I'm not over cutting the sparge with the right points. I'm not over sparging. One, just wasteful of water.
When you say you adjust, are you changing the pH of that sparge water as you go and acidifying through that process so it's not too acidic as you start, but becomes more acidic in order to make up for that, the pH change over the course of that?
I would love to have a dosing pump in line to dose the sparge as it goes. Unfortunately,
Sure.
I don't. So I do, once I do start sparging, I do throw in 50 to 150, depending on the batch size, mLs of FOS just to help buffer that. And so it's not a smooth pH line the whole way. It does dip down a little bit and then dip back up, of course. But yeah, I would love an inline doser on that. That would be the dream right there.
You can't have everything. Have everything. Well, let's. I want to talk about fermentation. We can kind of, then I also, want to get into some of the, kind of more modern takes on lager that you also, you also play in, the kind of contemporary hoppy lager space. I want to talk about that too. Before we do that, today's episode is brought to you by ADM. Are you ready to shake up the beverage world? ADM is passionate about helping you craft your next breakthrough, from cutting-edge natural ingredients like hops to advanced technologies. ADM brings together science and creativity to elevate taste, quality, and recipe design. Whether you're developing a beer innovation or a bold new flavor experience, ADM is your trusted partner in innovation. Let's create something extraordinary, because the future of beer and brewing starts with inspired ideas and exceptional expertise. ADM is where nature meets precision. Learn more at adm.com/alcohol. And running a brewery means juggling a lot: managing production, serving guests, selling online, and keeping everything moving behind the scenes. That's where Arrived comes in. What started as a point-of-sale system has grown into the technology your brewery runs on, built specifically for the teams behind great beer. Unlike generic systems, Arrived brings together taproom service, online sales, brewery management, payments, reporting, and growth tools into one complete platform. So instead of bouncing between systems, you can brew, serve, and sell all in one place. Visit Arrived, ARRYVED.com to learn more. Also, pumps are critical to any advanced homebrewing setup, from mash recirculation to wort transfer, and even for cleaning. A quality pump is a key part of every brew day. The SS Brew Pump from SS Brewtech is engineered to tackle even the messiest brew days, featuring an IP55 water resistance rating, an easy-to-use DIN head with 360-degree rotation, and a flow rate of up to 11 gallons per minute. It has the power to keep your brew day moving. Visit ssbrewtech.com/pump to learn more about how the SS Brew Pump can upgrade your home brewery. Let's talk about fermentation for a little while, Brian. You mentioned you use 3470, so it's a very safe choice, and with a lot of knowledge about how to brew effectively. With that fermentation, how does that work then, for you with, again, the flavor that you are working towards developing, through your own malt and everything else?
It's a workhorse. It's just such a good solid yeast, flavor neutral, It throws some sulfur.
Dry 3470.
Dry, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, dry at the start. I mean, we're actually yesterday was when we won the award. That was our 2-year anniversary of announcing our existence. We had brewed one batch a couple weeks before that, and so we're only 2 years in as this brewery. So at the point where I probably eventually sooner than later we'll start switching over to some liquid yeast. But at the beginning it was the ease of didn't know how frequently we were going to be brewing. 20 barrel batches as a startup brand is going to be pitch and ditch, as you said on the Berkeley yeast promo there, which I love. That Berkeley Tropics, that's great. I used that for a hazy back in the winter. That stuff was phenomenal. And I told them as such when they asked for some feedback. I was like, that's great. That's the once or twice a year that I'm going to brew hazy. I'm going to be using that stuff.
There you go.
So yeah, the dry was convenient for the pitch and ditch. The quality of dry yeast has grown immensely in the last, 10 years especially. It's night and day where the quality is with it. I do harvest. I definitely will go a couple gens on it, even with the dry. I usually go, 5 gens just to stretch it out a little bit, try to stretch that cost a little bit more. Be mindful, obviously, because that would be the single largest ingredient on the batch. So try to just be mindful of that. I love the fermentations off of the second through like 5th gen is just phenomenal. The startup is great. It just gets ripping right away. With the dry pitch, there's that long lag phase too. You got that like pretty much 24 hours of just, real static lag phase. There is a flavor that comes through on that. It's one of those, like, you can never quite pinpoint what the flavor is, but there's just that distinctive like 1st gen flavor.
What do you brew first to accommodate that?
My IPA, actually. So, because it's a little warmer on the firm and dry hopped, obviously.
You step up your 3470 with IPA, then pitch into your lager after that.
Yep. Yes.
Well, all right then.
For legal purposes, we call our IPA. It does say IPA, but it is a hoppy beer. Because it is a hoppy beer. Yeah. So it has cola. It's legal. But what is an IPA anymore, right? Like, who cares? It's, West Coast IPAs are mostly brewed with lager yeast now anyway.
I am not worried about any of these definitions, Brian. I don't, I just hope you don't call anything an IPL, because that's a terrible name.
Oh my goodness. No, never.
I think, we use names to, connect people with the things, what they're familiar with the things they may not be familiar with. And so style names are just useful for saying, hey, this tastes like this, Anything
Absolutely.
beyond that just ends up being like, overly technical, semantic, wordplay and like, I am a word person. I get it. But we just don't need to get so granular on that and bore customers to tears. Mm-hmm. So let's not worry about that. Anyway, I just find it fascinating that you are going to, turn that dry yeast into the next generation of liquid yeast and do it through an IPA first, knowing that IPA is going to handle some of that kind of, flavor impact from that 1st gen.
Yeah, it was just that real everyday, like the real world startup. How are we going to cross this hurdle? Like, I'll figure it out as we go, and it's worked and easy enough to plan ahead and just, line up that 1st gen pitch with the IPA and get the lagers off of that on the 2nd through 5th gens. And the fermentation, just like I said, it gets going quick on those harvest and repitches. I like a good, strong, healthy fermentation. I want to see the first 24 hours, under Plato's fine. Obviously the pH drop is going to be one of your biggest things. That was one of the decoction things, was one of the wildest things to try to navigate through, is with the decoctions, the pHs, I just couldn't get the beers to finish in a good range. So I was having to like acidify post, which I did not want to do. And so I'd start really not making sure I was tamping down that acidity on knockout. So I'm knocking out around 5 pH with the addition of some FOS in there. And that allows us to get to a very healthy pH at the end of fermentation. At the brew that we brew at, Hidden Sands, we'll use yeast interchangeably. They'll brew their Pilsner with our yeast, or I'll use, harvest off of theirs or whatever. They don't do a decoction. They use Weihenmain malt. There's 5.3, 5.5 on the knockout sometimes. Finishes down 5.2 or 4.2 perfectly. Doesn't have any issue at all. So it really truly is a set decoction. So I would love to know, future lager brewers, please, if you have that same experience, let's talk about it, because I want to know what is going on with that. But say I want to see that nice healthy pH drop the first day. Acidify to around 5. I want to see that down at like a 4.6 at 24 hours, and about a point Plato. And then after that first 24 hours, let's see like roughly 2 Plato drop a day. Sponge. I do a subtle free rise, let it come up a couple of degrees. Yes, it trains for lazy yeast, but I'm also using this for an IPA here and there, so need it to be versatile enough to go through some flows on the temp there. So I do let it do a little free rise, sponge. We'll check for sulfur before hard capping the tank, and then just start a nice long slow crash. I'll take like 2 weeks to get it down to 40. Let it sit for a few days there. We'll VDK it. Assuming it passes VDK, usually the first check after 2-3 days. Then we'll start ramping it back down, let it lager. It's amazing. I love lager yeast. It's every batch is so unique on its own. I have a batch of Pilsner in the tank right now. After a week, it was not passing VDK, wasn't getting there. It's like, all right, we're gonna have to cruise in this batch. So let's learn something new. Let's go. On the 10th day, turn the corner, and it just like, where did that come from? Okay, and day 12, it was like clean as a whistle. All right, let's start ramping it back down. It's just, it's amazing. I love that. That's where the art and the science merge together. And some of the most fascinating things about brewing is that the science going on there throughout fermentation.
Anything else to, well, I guess we should talk about, Pilsner hops, or Pilsner hops really just, is that just the, first wort and more aggressive with those same kinds of varieties?
So for our future proof, the German pills, we use Saz and Saphir. I lean a little heavier on the Saphir. Just brings that little bit of that like lemongrass, like lemon brightness, that extra like zippiness to it. I like to I use Magnum for the first wort on that one. I like a nice layered hop profile. So I think there's probably 4 or 5 additions throughout that one. Just to really layer that hop flavor throughout. Too many Pilsners, especially, I don't know, I just had too many Pilsners where it's just like, you get the bitterness and then you get the aroma, and it's very lacking in the middle there. And I like that layered hop profile. I like to be able to taste through it and pick up where the bitterness goes into the flavor, goes into that aromatic quality, and really just let each component shine through.
How do you find that intersection with your malt flavor? Because that malt has its own character that's bringing to the table. I think I mentioned briefly before. I think there can be this like grassy on grassy character, with certain malt and hop combinations, and your malt that has its own very specific flavor, brings its own thing to the table. How do you think about what that flavor is, and how it intersects with your hops?
The malt flavor is just, it's clean. It's clean. It's pure. It's fresh. It is just such an incredible canvas to layer these other profiles on top of it.
You've said fresh, and I mean, what is that? How would you compare that to other, Pilsner malt that you have used? Like in terms of how it actually conveys in the beer, something, a malt that has 4 or 6 months, from the time that it was malted to the time that you're using it, which also can make very great award-winning beer. And, we're not saying that, that it can't, but I'm just curious about that. I mean, I think there is certainly something, especially when we start talking about dark malts, to this kind of freshness being I've had that conversation with a number of brewers already that, fresher dark malts make better beer, in the same way that you just don't want to use coffee that's, roasted a couple of months ago. Like fresh roasted coffee is going to produce a better, cup of coffee for you. And so, especially with those heavy, processed malts, like, that has an effect. But even here in the Pilsner space, you keep, I'm just curious what the difference might be, in some kind of even just anecdotal sensory, kind of way, what that freshness actually means.
For me, it's like it's a vibrance that doesn't come through. I don't get it on other beers. I do a lot of tastings out at liquor stores, and just people that don't even know what beer is, or they'll try it and they're like, wow, that is like refreshing. And so I really started to pick up on what other people trying it, like sight unseen, not knowing anything about it. And that's where I started like, wow, you know what, this is really fresh and really. And so then I started kind of like looking into it after the fact, and it does have this refreshing quality to it where it's going back to the coffee you just analogized there. Yeah, it's like, when a cup of coffee is brewed with fresh roasted, freshly ground versus ground a month ago, roasted 6 months ago. Like there's just such a vibrancy to it. The aromatics pop more, the flavor is brighter. It's tough to put into words. It's really, and it's almost impossible to quantify. It really is just like the artistry to it. I don't know. It's just, it's fun.
Well, and it's also funny to think about, historically, if we look at the way the beer was produced, often through beer's history, malt was produced at the brewery. And, we have in this modern era pulled those things apart. But you go to the Pilsner Quell brewery, and their malt house is right next to the brewery, and they make the malt that they're going to use very shortly after they malt it, because it's a production facility, and when you have things sitting around, that's inefficiency. You want to, and so they will always brew with fresh malt, because they have a constant supply of fresh malt, and they only make as much as they're going to need. In this modern era, as we have pulled some of those things apart and moved malt houses out of the brewery, then we add time into that in a way that it wasn't necessarily in there in the past. And so it's kind of interesting to think about going back to a more getting malt that just comes out of my maltster right when I need it, and it's that fresh, and going right into a beer and doing it at the scale that you do it. It's not as typical. It is possible, and there are a number of breweries around the country and around the world working with craft maltsters to do that kind of thing. And but it's interesting how that is closer to the way that beer had been produced, in this kind of pre-war era. But that's a whole nother historical conversation there. Let's talk about kind of modern hoppy lager before in the time that we have left here, because I'm curious about that. I think it was the Hugo Hoppy Pale Lager, which is definitely a different, much more modern and contemporary take on hoppy lager. One of my favorite categories to drink as a beer these days, just because the older I get, the more I love lower ABV beers, and I love this West Coast Pils / cold pale ale or whatever it is actually these days. Seems like it can be both of those things all at the same time, and the same beers can win in ale and IPA categories depending on the year and the competition. Talk about your take on that. Now, you're using the same your same Pilsner malt base, and then how where do you go from there as you're designing something like Hugo as a modern hoppy lager?
Yeah, so that was conceptualized as a West Coast Pilsner. When we sent it in we were calling it a hoppy pale lager. New Jersey's definitely behind the trend on West Coast Pilsners. There's 2 or 3 available in the state, and one of which is ours, the Hugo. So we were hesitant to call it that out of the gate. We since switched and just said, let's call it what it is. And some of my favorite of the West Coast Pilsners, I've tried a number of them coming over from California. The Colorado scene is definitely blowing up with them. You guys have an embarrassment of riches out there with great breweries. And I always found the ones that were the most enjoyable to drink, the most fun to drink for me, that were like very clearly like along the way the different styles. And so my approach to it was, it's a Pilsner up through the whirlpool. It's, I think, I do a first wort. I use Sapphire throughout the boil. And then when we get to the whirlpool, this is where we'll start to switch and allow the Pilsner to start to take a little bit of the back seat and let the West Coast portion come in. So I use Krush as a whirlpool edition, and then we'll do a Krush Motueka dry hop on it.
Krush T90 or Krush Cryo?
T90.
Okay.
T90 hot side, cryo on the cold side with it. I've done both depending on the batch size, but I like
Krush Cryo. So hot right now.
It is nice. It is very nice. Just get all that extra vegetal matter out of there and just really help just get that pure hop oil intensity. And so yeah, by treating it like a Pilsner up to the end of the boil, we get that nice layered hop profile, that the crispness, that drinkability, that the dry tannins that make you want that fun feedback loop where you're thirsty, take a sip, and then it dries you out, so you need to take another sip because you're thirsty. I love that feedback loop on Pilsners. And so we have that. And if it was nothing but like modern, Pacific Northwest or New Zealand hops with their alphas, I mean, yes, there's plenty of beautiful hops that don't have crazy high alphas, but if you use too much of them, you can't use as much, or you blow your balance out of the water and you're up at 50, 60 IBUs. So layering that, the hops, letting the German, the not that Sapphire is noble, but noble inspired, noble-ish, noble lineage, letting that layer the hop profile, layer that bitterness through, to then let the aromatics shine through off of the whirlpool and then the dry hop edition. You kind of do get that best of both worlds. For me, I have a pretty clear distinction between like Italian Pilsner, a West Coast Pilsner, a New Zealand Pilsner. The big one for me differentiator was the pounds per barrel on the hot, or pounds per barrel equivalency if you're using advanced hop products. But, we're calling it a West Coast Pilsner. Those hops got to be punchy. So we do, 2 to 2.5 pounds per barrel on the dry hop, which in a 5% beer finishes right around the 2. Super pale straw colored. There's no malt backbone to it. So if we went too heavy with the hops, it's just, you're off the scales. It's not balanced anymore.
So is that one decocted or no?
Yep. Yeah, that's got the decoction to it.
Cool.
Where it does have that softness, that fuller, that richness that really has no business being in there. To Plato beer. Sure. And so yeah, just hop the shit out of it with the dry hop. I do a cold dry hop on it too. I dry hop at 45 after I've harvested yeast. Harvest and then crop the rest of the yeast off. Dry hop, roll a couple days, VDK, and then get it down to 32. I don't let that lager that long. That basically just gets a week of cold conditioning. Don't filter that one. I do biofine it because it will drop out otherwise, and I hate nothing worse than pouring a can and you get a big old sludge coming. It happens. I'm okay with it, but if we're calling a West Coast Pilsner, I don't want it dropping out in the can. So I do biofine that to leave most of that behind in the FV before racking it over to the bright.
Yeah, no one wants sludgy lager.
No.
No, it makes sense. Anything else to it? I think that's it's kind of bright and fun, and obviously makes for a delicious beer.
Yeah, it's got that just brilliant hop aroma, the Motueka and the Krush, nice combo. It's not too aggressive. There's no dankness, there's no resinous, there's none of that diesel quality coming through. And so picking the right hops to add the vibrancy to it, with the citrus and the tropical notes to it, to not necessarily bring the more aggressive hop flavors to it. So that way you get that big punch of aroma, but then it's still that, imminently drinkable, super crushable, 5% Pilsner that is the best of both worlds. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Definitely as we get older, don't want to be drinking the 7-8% hazies and, West Coast, on a weeknight.
Don't get me wrong, love those beers too. But if I can drink a 5% hoppy, West Coast Pilsner or New Zealand style Pilsner, I'm gonna enjoy all my hops through that kind of canvas, and I'm not going to complain about it. Well, let's zoom out here in the end. You have up to this point a nomadic brewery brewing with this partner. But you all have some plans for the future, and Wanderback is gaining steam. Obviously, this is you guys have been making great beer from the very start of it, as far as our blind judges are concerned. Even in that very first year, you were scoring very highly, and have continued to do that in only 2 years now. To then come out with your first world beer coming out, but it's not your first. You're no stranger to this. You were prepared and ready, and not going into this with a giant. I mean, there was learning curve on some things, but certainly not on the brewing side. What's the next phase for Wanderback?
So yeah, we are working on a retail location. Hopefully that'll be open by end of summer, early fall. That's going to be in downtown Vineland, New Jersey. Vineland is it is the largest city in New Jersey geographically, but nobody knows where it is other than trying to look at it on a map. Definitely over in the farmlands of South Jersey. It's a cool city, a lot of up and coming things going on there. Mike Trout, the baseball player, he's from Millville, which is the city right next door. It's kind of like sister cities, and he's building a massive golf course with Tiger Woods. And so Vineland's got a lot of cool stuff going on with it right now. There's no breweries out there. As longtime industry guys, we didn't want to put a brewery in one of our friends' backyards. We got industry friends all over the state, and so we put it anywhere else. We were going to be stepping on someone's toes and drinking, taking their lunch money. And we don't want to do that, so we went out to Vineland, where there just is nobody. We can kind of just go chart our own course, not steal other people's regulars for the tap room. So tap room's coming hopefully by end of the summer, early fall. And but we're still going to keep with we're putting a smaller system in there. We're going to do 10-barrel tanks there just to have taproom stuff. In New Jersey, anything sold on site has to be produced on site. So we'll be a small system there for the taproom, and then we're going to keep the wholesale beer coming out of our current partnership that we have going now. And we're just we're not trying to take over the world. We're not trying to be the biggest or the best or anything. We're just trying to make beer that we're proud of and passionate about, and showcase that awesome local malt and make beer make beer as a brewer wants to drink it.
Well, clearly the brewers judging the Hellas category at World Beer Cup wanted to drink it and gave you a gold for it. And that's a great place to bring this to a close. G&D now offers their Elite 290 Micro Series with 5H chillers, bringing even more flexibility to their propane-powered lineup. Berkeley Yeast's Dry Tropics London offers their best-selling liquid yeast strain with the ease of use of dry yeast. Pactex handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable. Tap into the multi-layered wonders of Indie Hop Strata, now available as Strata Cryo. The Midea 50/50 Flex can convert to all fridge, all freezer, or half and half with just the touch of a button. Old Orchard is your one-stop shop for fruit juice concentrates, purees, and blends. ADM brings together science and creativity to elevate taste, quality, and recipe design. Arrived brings together all the tools you need in one complete platform, and the SS Brew Pump from SS Brewtech is engineered to tackle even the messiest brew days. If you've enjoyed this podcast, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber, and next time Wanderback scores a 95 or a 97, or who knows, even higher than that, you can read the review first when it comes out for subscribers via digital PDF the very day, and and all of that kind of stuff, and also go back and read all the great stories about brewing. If you're listening to this, clearly you are interested in brewing, and we have what you need in craft beer and brewing. Brian, if people want to learn more about Wanderback, where can they find you in the future in real life? Vineland Taproom, but right now out there in the digital space?
Yes, right now you can go get us at a lot of the local bars and restaurants and liquor stores throughout South Jersey. We just started some very limited Pennsylvania, mostly Philadelphia distribution, and but digitally you can go find us at Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We are Wanderback Beer on those different platforms. We do have a website, but it's essentially just a landing page right now that links you to those. Eventually we'll get around to making it a proper website, but we need time for that.
Well, congrats on winning gold medal in Hellas at the biggest world stage in beer. Quite an accomplishment. But all the beer that we've tasted from you all has been fantastic, and excited for you. And thanks for joining me this day after you win for an immediate turnaround episode here on Gold Medal Hellas. I appreciate you making time, and amidst your personal celebrations, carving out some time to talk to me about this. It's been great chatting with you. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.